You've nothing better to do than watch me try to keep the lights on in here. I suppose you want a story. You always do. This story's called We Went Hiking in Mountain Lion Territory and Ran into Something Much Worse. The sun had set by the time we parked at the trailhead. We had 3 miles to go before we reached camp, meaning the bulk of our trek would be in the dark. Despite the danger of mountain lions, Kurt brushed off my suggestion to start early the next morning. We'll just keep talking and stick together. They only pick off stragglers. And so we went. Our visibility dwindled until I could scarcely see beyond the edge of our path. Snapping twigs and rustling brush punctuated the brief gaps in our conversation. After a particularly loud crack, I whipped around, searching for the source of the noise. My light fell on something wrong. Just beyond the tree line, it looked like an enormous buck, dripping with black tar. Hairless, gray skin clung to an emaciated frame. John? Millie called from ahead of me. I turned my light forward to find my friends were almost out of sight. Keep up, or your cougar food. When I looked back, the deer was gone. After 4 hours of walking, we made camp nearby, beside a snow-melt lake. I kindled the fire, tending to it long after my friends retired to their tent. Each time the flames fell low, a pair of red eyes danced in the dark, glowing like the embers before me. When I added another log, the presence would retreat from view. Exhaustion eventually overtook me. John! Kurt shook me awake by the shoulders. Millie is gone. Did you see her? I jumped to my feet. How long has she been gone? Well, it couldn't have been... He grabbed my arm and froze. Listen. On strained ears, I heard the sloshing footsteps of someone wading through shallow water. We raced each other down the embankment until we spotted her standing thigh-deep in the inky water. Millie! Kurt hollered. She turned to look up at us a moment before a second figure came into view. The gray-skinned deer from down the trail, now standing on 2 legs. The beast placed a hoof on her shoulder, leading her deeper. Kurt called her name again, dashing after her. By the time we reached the water, Millie and the buck both disappeared beneath the surface. The sheriff didn't believe our version of events, of course. Kurt and I slept days in a cell until the search party could dredge out the lake and comb the area. Of course, this turned up nothing. Millie Palmer simply vanished that night. But the creature shepherding her into the depths didn't. It checks in on me often. On empty streets or secluded trails, the location seems not to matter so long as it's sufficiently dark and there's water somewhere nearby. Each sighting, my pursuer grows closer, bolder. My questions grow as well. If I'd let the fire die, would it have taken me that night? And what will happen once it does finally catch me alone in the dark? Well then, for as many as I have in front of me, that story makes me want to light a few more candles. I wonder what that would have been. A deer-like creature, but somehow related to water. What did you think of that story? Let me know beneath. And subscribe already. Yeah, you want another story, don't you? I figured. Fine. This one's called The Rocking Horse Murders. Well, that's what the press call it, and it's grade A bullshit for numerous reasons. For example, there was only one incident when they made that title. It shouldn't even have been plural. The media does that every day, fear-mongering. Make people think that your child could be next. The victim's name was Darla Jensen. She was 19 years old, and the textbook definition of a sweetheart. Her father was a brilliant engineer. He combined his inventions and art in amusing fashions. His latest creation was a modified rocking horse. The toy was mounted onto its own moving platform, where its rocking would combine with the thrashing of a machine to create what is best described as a bucking bronco ride. You know, the kind that simulates rodeos. To call the call that the father had made to the police hysterical would be an understatement. You could hear his soul writhe in anguish from the way that he spoke. I was one of the investigators on the scene. It was one of the most foul deaths that I've ever witnessed. Darla's legs were duct-taped to that horse. Something best described as a metal noose was secured to her neck and the rafters. When the perpetrator turned on the machine, the bronco spun and thrashed around, along with all parts of her body, except for her head. The head tore itself, along with excess skin on her torso, off of the body. It looked like the head had been screwed off. We quickly scoured through the security cameras and scene, hoping to find what psycho tortured her like that. We quickly discovered what actually happened, though. Darla did this to herself. She taped her legs to the machine. She secured the metal noose around her neck. Then, wielding a stick, she pushed the button that turned the machine on. She tore her damn head off her own body. I wouldn't believe it if it wasn't on the footage. We never found out why she decided to kill herself like that. Hell, we didn't even find out why she killed herself to begin with. She didn't even leave a note. We do, however, know why her father did it. We should have moved that godforsaken rodeo machine out of his house, but we didn't. He killed himself less than a week later. He used the same head unscrewing method that she had. Down to the letter. His suicide note simply read, "See you soon, baby girl." That's when the media gave the deaths a more accurate name. The Rocking Horse Suicides. At least its plurality is justified. Terrible to read, but more and more gruesome the more imagination you pour into that one. Well, let me know what you think of it in the comments below. And because these two have been slightly on the short side, I'll give you another one, slightly longer. This story is called, "Why Did They Have to Choose Our House?" We heard the warnings in the news. The anchor delivered the news with piercing eyes and a dramatic voice. He did a great job of expressing the severity of the situation. There was a malfunction in the nearby prison security system, which we know now is largely due to the prison warden's attempt to be more eco-friendly. Batteries die, and solar panels suck in states where there's more cloud than sunlight. We weren't the only ones who chose to stay in our home and wait it out. There were a few families who simply had nowhere to go. Some would rather die than leave their homes. Their names you might have seen briefly in the news. We bought some food in excess and boarded up the windows and doors, the same stuff you see in all the movies. Only, we didn't have any guns. My girlfriend Lucy hated them. She's a firm believer in gun control. The orange jumpsuits had fled into the forest and left in every direction. Being the closest town, it made sense to pack up and leave, but as I said, not everybody thought so. With a total of 17 escapees running in every direction, there would be about 5 hitting the town at most. All of this was theory, of course, but our false confidence established this theory as fact within our minds. Let them come. The police would stop them before they reached us. Yes, with hindsight, we were idiots. I thought up several excuses for what we did, from simply having never experienced a real crime to thinking we never would. At the end of the day, we were still fools for staying. We realized it when we heard voices outside our home that night. Lucy became stiff, as if shocked by a jolt of electricity. At some point, it was like a constant current that was running through her as she started moving around, so fast and shaking like a leaf. I was no better. I couldn't figure out which side of the house the voices were coming from, my first idea being that we leave the house and make a run for the car. Another dumb move we luckily didn't make. Instead, we took advantage of the crawl space beneath our floor. It wasn't a protected basement or a bunker, but it was something. We had the hatch beneath the carpet in our living room. The handle was removed, so I had to use a screwdriver to pry it open. Together, we put our fingers beneath the lip of the lifted lid, and it was a lot heavier than it looked, but the wood floor was old and thick, so it made sense. Lucy crawled under there first, taking a bag of food and a few water bottles with her. I followed after, draping the carpet on top of the hatch and lowering it carefully. I didn't want the carpet to bunch up anywhere. With a thud, the hatch was in place, and I was crawling along the dusty ground to the still form of my Lucy. The front door was bashed in by the time I reached her. She took my hand in hers, and I held it as the door finally gave way. Pathetic nails and a few planks didn't offer much in the way of security. We were terrified. We knew we were in a terrible position, one we didn't know how long we had to be in before help found us, if it ever did. That was the start of our torture. The first footsteps trampled above us. The intruders moved quickly, running further into the house. I heard them enter my office, the guest room, and our bedroom. I heard the doors being slammed, wardrobes pulled open. I'm sure they looked under the beds. The prisoners weren't quiet, but they didn't speak either. It was tough to make out how many there were, maybe 5 or 6. I guess I didn't expect so many to be working together. So maybe it's true that gangs in prison are pretty close-knit. Not something I thought about at that moment. I was just alarmed when they turned the lights on. Light flowed between the gaps in the floorboards. There wasn't a gap wider than my little finger, but it still felt like they were far too large. I saw the way the light curved along Lucy's body, and she looked so weak, so frail. I could see her wide eyes as she looked at me. I saw the fear before she closed them tight, mouthing something quickly to herself, a silent prayer. I reached for her, but stopped when I heard a scream. It came from right above us, making us both jump. Lucy made a small sound, but not loud enough to be heard. The scream carried on for a moment before falling silent. When it did, there was the sound of someone falling. A short burst of thumps as a body hit the ground. We could see where the body fell from the light that it blocked. There was another moment of silence before they started speaking. About time. I was getting sick of him. He was never one of us, the voice said. The voice was slow, steady. I heard the sounds of tearing plastic and the click of a lighter. The man speaking had found my cigarettes and decided to help himself. Do you want to use him for anything? Or can I? The voice right above us said. He must have been the killer. We can use him. Put him over there for now and go get the others, will ya? The smoking one said. You want to do it here? Initiation doesn't have a set time, Samuel. Hurry along. You two, go with them. 3 sets of steps left the house. Silence came quickly. Eventually, all we could hear was the smoking man puffing at a cigarette, slowly and dramatically, as if he were savoring the taste. It was so quiet that we both didn't dare to move, choosing to play dead. I didn't even want to turn my head. Lucy must have felt the same way, as I didn't hear a peep out of her. It was a good hour of waiting, listening to the man go around the house. He spent a lot of time in the kitchen and putting stuff on the counter between it and the living room. Whenever he was far enough away, we took the opportunity to get more comfortable in our positions, mainly ones where we could move without making too much noise. Once more, Lucy's hand found mine, and I held on to it tightly. We heard more voices and laughter. An entire crew of convicts had entered our home. I think I even glimpsed the orange of their clothes, but I could be mistaken. One thing is for sure, they were very happy. Their laughter wasn't any different from friends having a night out, or even teenagers after school ended. It was only when they were walking into my home that they changed their tune. Their laughter died, as did the heaviness of their footsteps. It was almost like they were trying to be polite while intruding, but I soon understood why when the smoking man spoke. Lights, Samuel, if you please, he said, putting on airs of sophistication. Samuel snickered and did as the man asked. The lights were turned off, but the room wasn't completely dark. It took me a moment to realize candles had been lit. Thank you. One went out as I said one was lit. As I realized candles had been lit. Thank you. I think we all find this a lot more appropriate. Another click of the lighter. I really shouldn't smoke during this initiation, but I think you can forgive me. It's been some time since I walked free. Longer than most of you, I should say. There was a collective hum of agreement. I don't imagine it will be long before we're found and taken back. But before that happens, I think we should make this all official. Now is as good a time as any, as I was telling Samuel. Bear in mind, there is no going back. You've all made your decision by entering this house, etc., etc. You can try to run, but Samuel will stop you. Not try to stop you, will stop you. Is that clear? There was a beat, and then the smoking man picked it up. Fantastic! I have to say, it's been a while since I've seen so many ready to take the step. A lot of cowards, weaklings out there, morons who wish to be something other than devout followers, and think that we are the best option after that. There is a God, gentlemen and woman, and that is me. Samuel made a coughing sound as if to clear his throat. "Don't you start with me. By the way, which do you think will be the first to find us? Him or Mike?" "Do you really need to ask?" Samuel said. I could hear his smile. "Best begin now before Michael finds us." "So right you are. Now, you do have a choice in your initiation. Each one is presented on the table. I want you all to take your pick now." There was a scramble as the convicts ran to the table. There had to be 20 of them, pushing against each other, climbing over furniture and knocking over objects. It was chaos. I heard things break, curses, spat, and yelps of pain. All that noise was followed by the smoking man and Samuel's laughter. "You there, you've got yours. Bring it here," the smoking man ordered. "I might need your help, Samuel. There are a lot of them." "I will try not to disappoint," Samuel said, this time boasting the words with eagerness. "You there, give it to me and close your eyes. I will try to be gentle." "You twisted bastard," the smoking man called as the commotion began. What follows isn't fit to repeat, and thinking about it brings me all kinds of pain. Even if I omit most of it, I can still only describe it as a vision of torment. The scream that jolted us at the start was nothing compared to the screams that followed. There was so much noise that we didn't care if we made any noise ourselves. I wrapped my arms around Lucy, and she did the same for me. I did my best to cover her ears and smother her cries. Among the screams, and in the moment of silence, there was a heavy breathing and the sounds of blood dripping. It was soft at first, barely audible, but all around us puddles began to form. I could feel that sickening warmth hit my leg and soak into my clothes. I can remember the different cries, the stages, the levels of pain. I can remember the words that they said with each sound, the sequences of their suffering. Detachment saved my mind from additional damage, but by then they were nearly done. There were a few more cries that followed, but they ended with disturbing sounds inflicted by whatever weapons Samuel and the smoking man had. "Not a bad night," the one with the cigarette said. "Don't know if he will be happy with it, but I sure am. What do you think?" "They will do. You just enjoy the initiations, don't you?" "I don't have the mind for bigger things," Samuel answered. "I am merely a tool. I have so little respect for you that I almost hate you. You know that?" "I don't care. He is almost here. He must have heard us." The smoking man sighed. "Well, do you think this is the time to deal with those two hiding under the floor?" The smoking man asked. "Well, there's only one way to find out." The two ran towards the part of the room where the hatch was located. We were frozen in fear, thinking that the worst was about to happen. Then there was light. It was blinding and pure. I could see all the dust and cobwebs in the crawl space. I saw the bright portal open as the hatch was lifted. I heard voices but couldn't make out any of the words. I saw a bloodied hand curl around the edge and hold on to it until finally it gave in and it was dragged away by something else. The light faded and darkness returned. Lucy and I were found by the police much later. We were asleep when they did, still holding on to each other. We wouldn't wake up, no matter how much they prodded us and yelled. Eventually they thought something was wrong, and with the help of paramedics they managed to get us out of the crawl space. We finally woke up in the back of an ambulance before it had ever left. oxygen masks attached to our faces. After removing them, they gave us a once-over and concluded that we were in good health. The police started to talk with us next, and we told them as much as we could possibly remember. It seemed our information wasn't that useful, though, as there wasn't an escaped prisoner that was named Samuel, and neither of us had truly confirmed that we'd seen any of the escaped prisoners. It was still pinned on the prisoners escaping and becoming unaccounted for, but our story had more holes than Swiss cheese. The cherry on top of our ludicrous experience was the state of our home. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing was broken, no bodies, and no blood. Not even the blood I felt hit my pants. They were perfectly clean. While driving through the town, the police saw the door was open, decided to investigate, and they found an empty house with a hatch hang open in the living room. That's how they managed to find us. And yes, people closer to us have questioned our sanity. Not just the cops who needed concrete proof before believing anything. Lucy and I still get angry about it to this day, having those who love us occasionally look at us as if we were absolutely crazy. We talk about it sometimes. We write down what we experienced and read it over and over again, but it only raises more questions than it answers. What was this initiation all about? How did they know we were hiding? What happened afterwards? And just, why did they have to choose our house? I would definitely love to know what could have happened after this, but I suppose it's not to know, as our perspective was with them under the floor. Interesting. Samuel. Well, what did you think of this story? Let me know in the comments beneath. As for me, I'm done telling stories today. I do hope that you'll join me in the future for more Frail Blaze tales. And as I've said earlier, just subscribe already. And have a good day.